Hello students, welcome again for our lesson 3. I'm happy that we have been able to move on from our lesson 1 to now we are in lesson 3. And I'm sure the basics that we have learned in lesson 1 and lesson 2 will also apply in our lesson 3, which is about elasticity, something elastic. When we talk about elasticity, we want to explain a certain response of demand to change in another variable, either the price, the income, or cross elasticity. So by the end of the lesson, I expect that the learner will be able to define what elasticity is, demonstrate the 5 types of elasticities, price elasticity, income elasticity, and also the elasticity caused by the price of a related product. And also, I will expect that once we are done with this lesson, you'll be able to apply the issues of elasticity in real life situations. Then differentiate between the types of elasticities. That is basically what we are going to learn in our lesson 3. So we start by defining elasticity, which the first one that we are going to define is the price elasticity. It means our price elasticity is the degree of responsiveness of change in demand, or the degree of responsiveness of demand to change in price. What does that mean? It means that when the price as a variable changes, it triggers a change in demand. I want to remind you what we did in lesson 2 when we talked about demand. We said that demand and price have got kind of a relationship, which we said it has, in normal circumstances, it has what we call an inverse relationship. So what we are saying, we want to see that change that is triggered on demand by price. Is it drastic, is it big, or is it small? Normally, when we say something that is elastic, we know even when we are dealing with a product that is elastic, maybe a rubber band, depending on the pressure that you exert on that, it may cause a big change, or depending on the pressure, it may cause a small change. So we want to look at what is the response. How does the consumer respond when, for example, the price changes either drastically or price changes in a big way or in a small way. Basically, that is about price elasticity. Now, we're going to look at it and see what happens. Also, we are going to look at income triggered elasticity. When our income changes, how do we respond? Do we respond in a big way through demand? When we talk about response here, we are talking about the way we respond and demonstrate our response through demand. Now, it is possible, depending on even somebody's character, that when our income changes, even in a small bit, we may change our lifestyle, we may change our demand in a big way. Also, it's possible that depending either on even the product, we may not even change. We will still behave the same way, we will still respond through demand in the same way. Then the other response that we may look at, or the elasticity we may look at, is the price of the related product. If the products are substitutes, like we saw in our earlier lesson, how do we respond? Does the price of a substitute product cause us to completely shift our demand from product X to Y, or we just stay the same? So we start with the price elasticity of demand, and we say the price elasticity of demand is the change in demand due to change in price. The change, the income elasticity is the demand that is changed as a result of change in income, and the cross elasticity is the change in demand of a product due to change of the price of related or another product, which basically is a substitute. We start with the price elasticity. Normally, we are saying, or we can define it as the proportionate change in demand due to proportionate change in price. normally the price elasticity is said to be a measure of responsiveness of demand to change in price. We are able to calculate that elasticity. We can be able to calculate that degree of responsiveness by change in quantity over change in price. When we do that and apply this formula, where is change in quantity demanded over change in for example, AQ, or the delta here means change in Q. We compare it to get that change. We compare it with the initial change. For example, if the price of bread was, for example, 40 shillings and it moves to 45, we want to see how will the consumer respond towards that change. So our formula here, I want to explain it. This is change in Q, and we compare it with the initial change over change in price in comparison with the initial price. And when we apply, we are able to calculate what the price elasticity is. I want to skip that and go to that calculation here that I'm demonstrating. For example, the price of a certain product moved from 10 shillings to 5 shillings. As a result, the quantity demanded, which was initially at 100 shillings, it increased. Remember we said, when the price go up, demand goes down. So similarly, when the price go down, demand goes up. And if we are able to calculate that, we see that there is an elastic demand of 3. So that is how we are able to calculate that elasticity. And we are able to now explain, go to the next level. And we ask ourselves, how can we demonstrate that elasticity, even graphically, so that we are able to explain and see that whether it is drastic, whether it is a small change, whether it's a big change. Now, if the change in price causes more than proportionate, we are going to use a range of 0 to 1. Now, if change in price causes more than proportionate change in quantity demanded, it is said to be elastic. We talk about 5 levels of elasticity. These 5 levels are either elastic, unit elasticity meaning equal, inelastic, perfectly elastic, and perfectly inelastic. Those are the 5 levels we are going to look at. I want to repeat them. We talk about, we start, if it is equal to 1, we call that one unit elasticity. Meaning that when price changes from like 2 to 4, quantity demanded moves from 4 to 2. That is equal. We call it unit elasticity. Then, if it is greater than 1, we say it is said to be price elastic. It means that when the price changes from like 2 to 4, the quantity demanded may change from like 6 to 2. Now let's demonstrate that here. The first diagram that you're seeing here is where the change is greater than 1, greater than a unit, or equal proportionate. It means initially the price moved from P2 to P3. When the price was at P2, the quantity demanded were 4 units. Okay? But now, the price has just moved a bit, just from P2 to P3, 1 unit change. But see what happens. The quantity demanded decreases from 4 units to 1 unit, meaning the degree of response is very big, is greater than 1. Normally we say, when such a thing happens, we can explain it and say, a small change in price triggers a very big change in quantity demanded. We call that one elastic, price elastic. It is very elastic. Now, I have compared it, I've brought this curve here so that we are able to compare in a big way here. Because you can see the demand curve is very flat. unlike where the elasticity is less than 1, when a big change in price triggers a very small change in quantity demanded. Let's look at what is happening here on this curve. When the price is at 2 shillings, and when the price is at 2 shillings, 1.5 units are demanded, 1.5 units are demanded. But when the price increases all the way to 3, the quantity demanded is just 1, meaning only half of the unit has been triggered. So it means the demand curve is more or less a straight line. It means that a very big change in price is triggering a very small change in quantity demanded. So we are able to compare when the degree is great and when the degree is small. Where the elasticity is greater than 1, where elasticity is less than 1. The degree of responsiveness is less than 1. Then let's move on to where it is equal to 1. It means when the price increases by 2 units, demand decreases by equal proportion, 2 units. So it means that the elasticity is equal to 1. When the price changes from P2 to P3, the quantity demanded changes from Q2 to Q1. Equal proportion. And normally, this is what is experienced, sometimes not in real life situation, because there is no way that we are going to have equal proportion. I'll explain that later. Let's move on to when the elasticity is equals to 0. When elasticity is equals to 0, it means that the consumer is not responding in any way to change in price. He's consuming the same quantity. Whether the price has gone up or down, the consumer is continuing to consume the same quantity. The price here moved from P1 to P2 to P3. But you can see the quantity demanded is the same. I'll come back there to apply all those in real life situation. But for now, let's first of all continue with what we are saying here. Then there is what we call perfectly elastic demand. The price is not changing, but the consumer is consuming more and more of a quantity of a product, irrespective of constant price. So it means, therefore, the consumer is not responding as expected to the change in, is not responding. He's responding in a major way to consuming more and more of a product despite the constant price. Let's go back to our situation here, where the elasticity is equals to 1. I said earlier, this cannot happen. It's a phenomenon that helps us to understand about elasticity. But in real life situation, we cannot have such a situation. Why? Number one, when we talk about the price, when we measure the degree of responsiveness, here we are talking about the price, here we are talking about the quantity. We measure the two variables using different parameters of measure. For example, we measure maybe the price using shillings, but we are measuring the quantity demanded using maybe kilograms, or using the weight, using the distance, using any other parameter. There is no way, therefore, we are going to compare the quantity and say that there is an equal 1-to-1 ratio of price and quantity. However, the unit elasticity helps us to understand the concept of that change. But when we move to the next one, where it is greater than 1, where elasticity is greater than 1, this can happen in real life situation. Let's understand how. We are saying where it is greater than 1, it means a small change in price triggers a very big change in quantity demanded. It means that a consumer here is responding in a big way to a small change. What about those goods that are consumed and they are luxuries? The type of the product will dictate the elasticity. If I'm buying a product X, and it is not a necessity, it's not for survival, I'm likely to respond in a very big way to a very small change in price. If its price goes up, even with a very minimum amount, I'm likely to say, I don't really need this product. So I'm likely to respond, and the elasticity here is very elastic. Now, when we move to a situation where a big change in price triggering a very small change in quantity demanded, again, this can happen in real life. And I explained how. Supposing this product is foodstuff, which I must consume, whether there is a drastic change in price, a big change in price or not. It means I may just adjust in a small way. For example, when the price of maize flour goes up, I'm just likely to reduce the amount of ugali that I make. But essentially, I'll still make that almost similar quantity. When the price of sugar goes up, because these are necessities, I'm not given much choice. I'll still consume almost the same. And maybe I can use sugar as an example. I'm likely not now to place the sugar to have everybody serve themselves at the table, but I'm likely to still use sugar and put it wholesale in the kitchen and just stir and put it homogeneously for everybody. But still, the same quantity I'm likely to consume. This is where the product is a necessity. Let's go to a situation where the elasticity is equals to 0. Let's try to apply it in real life situation. I'm saying that when the price moves from P1 to P2 to P3, meaning it is consistently increasing, I'm consuming the same. Normally, whether the price of salt, for example, whether it increases or decreases, I will not eat more salt or less because of the change in price. So elasticity is equals to 0. My degree of responsiveness towards that price is completely 0. I consume the same. Now, when we talk about products like pepper, if I consume that product, whether the price goes up or down, I'll still consume the same. So depending on the type of the product, I'm likely to respond in different way, either very elastic or 0 elasticity. I go to the factors that will affect or influence price elasticity of demand. The first one is substitutability. Normally, I've said I'm likely to respond in a specific way depending on whether the product has got a substitute or not. I'm likely to experience elastic demand if that product has got a substitute. I want to give an example here. I want to talk about Lifebuoy and Dettol soap. Those two are substitutes. They are perfect substitutes. If the price of Dettol soap goes up, since there is an alternative, I'm likely to have elastic demand and just move from Dettol to Lifebuoy, simply because my response is because there is a substitute. Supposing there was no substitute at all, I'm going to experience what we call inelastic demand. Why? Even if the price increases, if the product is a necessity, I'll still consume it because there is no substitute. And basically, that is how it goes. Then, the other factor that influences the price elasticity of a consumer, it is the consumer's income. If my income goes up, or it remains the same, depending now on the product. For example, the matchbox, things like needle, things like salt. You realize that I'm likely to just have inelastic demand on those products. Why? The quantity or the proportion of my income that I spend on those products like matchbox, it is so minimal. So I'll not even think about it. I'll not even bother whether the price has gone up, because even if the price went up, it will go with a very small proportion, and the amount of income I spend on such is minimal, so I'll have inelastic demand. But on the other hand, if I spend a very big chunk of my income on a certain product, and the product's price goes up, I'm likely to respond, so I'll have elastic demand. Then let's look at the other factor, the extent to which the product is habit forming. This goes for products like alcohol or cigarettes. If, for example, I'm already addicted to such a product, I will experience inelastic demand. Why? There is nothing I can do. I'm addicted unless I get help. Now, if I get help, I may respond differently. But as long as a consumer is addicted to a product, even if the price changes in a big way, they will experience inelastic demand. On the other hand, if the consumer is not addicted and can be able to manipulate, they will experience very elastic demand. Then we look at the number of uses of a commodity. If I'm able to put a product into a number of uses, then I will experience what we call elastic. There will be a greater price elasticity. Unlike where that product is just put on one use, which again I experience inelastic demand. What about the length for, if I'm given time, the length of adjustment? I'm given time to adjust. For example, let's look at a situation where the price of bread moves from 40 maybe to 45 to 50 over a period of time, let's say 1 year. I will experience inelastic demand. It will not bother me, so I'll experience inelastic demand. But supposing in 1 week the price of bread moves from 40 to like 80 shillings, I'm likely to react in a major way. So I'll have elastic demand, because the length of time I'm given to adjust my income to respond to this change is very small or it is very large. So that also dictates. The other factor is whether the product, the type of a product, is it a necessity in life or is a luxury? If it is a necessity, I'll experience inelastic, because there is no way I'm going to do without it. But if it is a luxury, I will experience, or I will have what we call elastic demand. Why? Because I can do without it. So I will respond in a major way towards a change in price. What about government policy? When the government wants to trigger some kind of a response and increases tax in a major way, depending on the product, the consumer is going to respond towards that change in price that has been triggered by taxes. Normally, we see government imposing taxes on products like alcohol. Why? They hope to trigger an elastic, because number one, alcohol is not a necessity. It is a luxury. So it helps to trigger. But sometimes, unfortunately, since it is a habit forming, if the consumer is already addicted, he's likely to experience inelastic. But if he's not addicted, he will experience elastic demand. Before I go back to the review questions, I want to bring in the income elasticity. I said earlier, and I want to emphasize before I go to the review questions, about income elasticity. This is the degree of responsiveness of demand to change in somebody's income. Normally, the income and demand have got a direct relationship. When our income go up, our disposable income goes up. Our demand will also go up. For one, the curve that is involved will move upwards from the left to the right. It means, therefore, we can respond in a major way, and I said earlier, depending on somebody's character also. Depending on my character, I'm likely to experience inelastic demand even when my income changes. When my income goes up, I may just continue the way I am, the way I will just consume the products that I consume. But depending on somebody's character, there are people whose income will change in a very small way, and they will change their lifestyle, they will demand so much more. And these are the people who even borrow to sustain their habits. They will borrow from Mshwari, they will borrow from Tara, they will borrow from, simply it was triggered by a small change in their level of income. Now, I want also, before we conclude, to talk about the cross elasticity. The cross elasticity is the way we respond, our degree of, or it measures the way we respond to, through demand, to the change in price of a related, a substitute product. As I explained between Dettol and Lifebuoy, that is basically on the issue of the cross elasticity. I may respond in a major way, or I may respond maybe in a small way. When I don't respond, I say I'm experiencing inelastic demand. But when I respond in a major way, I'm experiencing what I call elastic demand. So I want to summarize and say that there are three causes of response in what we call elasticity. There is price elasticity, there is income elasticity, and there is cross elasticity. Price elasticity is triggered, is that change in demand due to price. Income elasticity is that change in demand that is triggered by change in income. And cross elasticity is that change in demand that is triggered by the price of a related or substitute product. Now, with that, I want us to look at these review questions that are likely to guide you more in trying to understand the topic that I have I'm just concluding. For example, I would want you to look at what do you mean by elastic demand? And with a few diagrams, the curves that we have talked about, we are able to demonstrate the types of the 5 levels of elasticity. Then we look at what are the factors that will influence elasticity. How do we measure elasticity? We are able to calculate it. We can calculate it and by putting figures on price and demand, income and demand, and price of the related products and demand. And then what is the importance of elasticity? I want to just mention here that knowing this topic of elasticity is important. It is important to the consumer because you need to budget. You need to plan yourself. If you are planning for goods that are of necessity, you will just have to know that you will buy them whether the price goes up or not because you have inelastic demand, so you need to budget for such. It is important for a supplier, for example, to know about elasticity. Why? They need to know which are the products that they can increase prices without affecting their demand. For the government, it is also important for the government to know about elasticity. Reason being, they will need to know which are the products. For example, they are planning their revenue correction. Which are the products can they increase the prices and still collect the same amount of money? They need to understand how a consumer responds to change in price, so that if they are planning to tax more on a product, they need to know how does the consumer respond. Do they respond by decreasing their demand drastically? Then they should not go there. But if they want to correct a certain amount of revenue, if it is crucial, especially at this point that they are spending so much, they need to know which are the products that they may increase tax and collect a same amount of money, and still there are people who still demand the same quantity. So it is important for us to know the importance of elasticity. Then we need to understand what is the point elasticity and cross elasticity, as I've explained. Then the issue of supply. Supply also experiences elasticity. Now we talk about elasticity of supply by showing the degree of responsiveness by the suppliers this time to change in price. Because similarly, just like consumers, they also respond to change in price. Is it elastic? Is it inelastic? Also distinguish between change in quantity supplied and change in supply, the factors that influence elasticity in supply, and basically how do we apply the concept of elasticity in real life, the life of the consumer, the life of the supplier, and in the government arena. So that marks the end of our lesson 3 today. I want to say thank you so much for listening. God bless you and stay safe. Thank you.
These televised lectures supplement our robust online learning going on our MKU online platform. You can view more on our televised lectures via our online platform. We are in a digital era, and Mount Kenya University knows this. The following are the steps to follow so as to complete your online application. Download the application form from the website www.mku.ac.ke. Attach copies of your academic certificates and ID. Pay the application fees via M-Pesa pay bill number 270988. Your ID is the account number. 2,000 shillings is the charge for a postgraduate. You can also deposit in the bank accounts provided on the website. Then email all the above to apply@mku.ac.ke.